two questions to ask you today, and I would ask you to be honest with these questions as much as you can. Number one, what would happen if you keep eating one thing after another? Let's say you had lunch, then you eat some cookies, then some biscuits, some cola, then some fries. What would happen? Probably you'll feel stuffed and unable to walk, but most probably you would want to vomit, right? Only because your body is not capable of eating everything at once. Now imagine second situation, similar situation, but in this case, someone grabs your face and stuffs food down your throat. And when you want to vomit, they close your mouth, leaving you on the floor to suffocate. And now you would say that, Renuka, why would I do that to myself? And I would probably kick the person who stuffs things down my throat when I don't want to eat. And I would say, fair argument. But in reality, you don't do that. In reality, you keep consuming other people's thoughts, judgments, ideas, opinions, and proven ways of how to live and enjoy life. With one reel, one video after another, you suffocate your brain until your brain loses its capacity to think straight. Your brain has fried and you know it. And that is why you have to rely on YouTube videos or books to question how to find happiness or how to find purpose in life. So I have two questions again. Why would you torture yourself like this every single day? And why do you think that the solution of your problem can be provided by someone else other than yourself? But this time I will answer. The answer is that you are so stuffed with what you have learned from the world that you never questioned, who am I? What do I want? How do I behave? And why do I behave and think the way I do? In reality, you are unknown to the person who lives within you and wants to communicate to you the truth about your life. While you and I would like to believe that we are driving the fate of our lives, and religious people might think that God is driving their fate, the reality, as per Dr. Fred Luskin's research at Stanford University shows that an average person has 60,000 thoughts per day. 90% of these thoughts are repetitive, and 75% of these thoughts are negative. But wait, it gets worse. As per the new UNSW study, we are constantly unaware of our thoughts, which means that our unconscious brain makes choices for us before we know that we are going to make this choice. When I looked at this data, I thought, this cannot be true. So I put this data to see if it's really true. And I asked this question to myself, which I would want you to ask yourself as well. Imagine your typical day and ask yourself, when was the last time you allowed your brain to actually think? And FYI, worrying and thinking are two different things. Thinking is what happened to Newton when an apple fell over his head. Worrying is what we do when we constantly repeat the same old thoughts every single day, like, what if I can't make it big in the world? What if people laugh at how I dress? Or what if I can never know my purpose in life? What if I can never know how to make people happy? If you take a sneak peek in your own mind, you will realize what we do today is not thinking. It's just a constant repetition of the same old thoughts that are based on your insecurities, flaws, and old beliefs. And as we keep repeating these thoughts every single day on loop without being aware of them, we make the unconscious stronger. And by that, we give power to the same behavior that is the reason why we feel so unhappy, anxious, detached, unfulfilled in life, even when for the first time we are living in an era of abundance. So why does this happen? It intrigued me when I looked at this data, and I wanted to understand what happened to all of us. How come we all forgot how to think and learn to worry instead? So I took a sneak peek in my own childhood and learned the answer. You see, ever since I was a kid, I wanted to do something big. At night, I would imagine myself in power suit, traveling for work, doing something important, attending meetings. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew that I wanted to do something big. But every single day, I was told by my teachers that I was dumb, by my relatives that I was ugly, and by my home teacher that why wasn't I more like my siblings who were naturally so good at studies. I was even beaten at school for not doing my homework properly or for not being able to learn what they had asked me to. But I wanted my teachers to understand that I wasn't a bad kid, that I was trying. But irrespective of how hard I tried to study, things wouldn't just sit in my mind. And so very quickly in my childhood, I developed a belief that I did not have a brain of my own. And the reason why I was not good in studies or in anything for that matter was because I didn't get the capacity to learn and to be smart like other kids did. You see, from a very young age, the adults around us grabs our face and stuffs things down our throat. And since we were kids and did not have a strong mental image of ourselves to rely on, we started to look at ourselves from the outside, from what we had learned from the external world about ourselves to be true. And to this day, we consider those beliefs about ourselves to be true and we judge our potential of what we can and cannot do basis those old beliefs. And you are sadly mistaken if you think that only happened to me or you. That happens worldwide to almost every single child. There was a very interesting study done back in the 1960s by, it was commissioned by NASA because NASA wanted to understand how to hire more geniuses. So NASA hired George Land and his team to understand what makes geniuses. George Land and his team examined a group of 5-year-olds and gave them a creativity task. Now pay attention. The way they defined creativity was, can you use your creative imagination to think your way out of a problem? Result, 98% of these students were qualified as geniuses. George came back 5 years later to examine the same children, but by the time the children had grown to 10 years old, and this number dropped from 98% to 38%. George came back 5 years later, and now the children were 15. And guess what? The number dropped from 38 to only 15%. George was disappointed and concluded that uncreativity is learned. Now, if you double click on this study and you look at the question properly, the question was, can you think your way out of a problem? And if you look at this study, the thing is that we all are taught to forget to think. Somewhere from the age of 5 to 10 or 10 to 15, something happens with us. Something is told to us that makes us so underconfident that we forget how to think our way out of problems. And that is why we have to rely on YouTube or find books on how to be happy, how to be successful, how to get out of rut, and questions like these. And that is why you don't feel happy with the choices you make, the work you do, or the people you hang out with. Because deep down, you know that you are meant for something bigger, more beautiful, and a life that actually excites you. And you realize that the path that you are walking on, it's not yours. It didn't come from you. And yet, you never sit down to question, okay, then what do I want? What am I here for? What is my passion? When COVID-19 happened and we were all forced to sit at home, my degree was about to come to an end and I still didn't know what I wanted to do. And I still had the belief that I was not born with a brain. And so for the love of my life, I cannot be in a field that is creative or has anything to do with a lot of thinking. I followed a lot of influencers, especially those of my age who were already making crores, and with their constant retelling of, here is how I made crore at 21, or here's how I bought my apartment at 25, or here's how I'm making $10,000 a month with freelancing at home doing almost nothing. I felt overwhelmed, burned out, and desperate, so much so that getting out of bed every single morning felt like a failure. I felt like a failure. Now, if you see that making X amount of money was never my goal, it didn't come from me, yet I was judging myself based on that goal. This is what happens when you consume too much of other people's thoughts and opinions. Their achievements become your goal. Their path becomes your journey, and their opinions become your guidelines of how you live your life. This is what happened to me. The constant consumption of media where every single video reminded me of how far behind I was in my own life when everyone had already reached the top of the mountain, made me physically ill, so much so that I was in depression. And I concluded, and I said it out loud, that I give up, that I cannot live like this, that I want something of my own, even if it's small, it's not big, and it doesn't involve a lot of money, but I want to make my own choices, and I want to be happy with those choices. I was in the middle of nowhere. I unfollowed every single influencer. I decided that I did not need advice, suggestion, or proven ways to become successful. I just want peace. I was tired. And life tires everybody. At some point, you realize how unaware and detached you were from your own heart. And in these silent realization, you begin to crave for a new way of life. You begin to crave for a change. And you realize that change doesn't have to be big or glamorous. Solitude brought that change for me. In solitude, with no friends, nowhere to go, no disturbance, no entertainment, I began to see the things that were always around me, but I never paid the attention because I was too much in my own mind, repeating the same old thoughts. I remember this day very vividly when I was sitting on my terrace at around 4:30 in the month of February, and the setting sun was hovering over this long tree, and the honey-kissed rays of the sun painted the leaves of the tree completely golden, and I thought it looked beautiful. And I kept looking at it in wonderment and thought, why didn't I notice it before? And I kept looking at it and I thought that I want to write about this experience. It was like a form of awakening for me. So I started to write about my experience, these normal, mundane, day-to-day life experiences, things that I was observing or looking around me, things that I never paid attention to. And I kept writing on this platform called Medium, from what I was experiencing, what I was observing, what I was thinking, how I was dealing with my failures, to what I thought the purpose of life was. After writing almost After writing for almost 3 years and making nothing but peanuts, I realized one day that I wanted to be an author. Again, I was sitting alone at night around 9 p.m. on my terrace when I got the realization that I wanted to be an author. There was only one star in the sky, and my heart was beating so fast that I thought it might come out of my chest. There's a place inside all of us that knows what is good for us, what we are capable of, and what we should do. But in order to get to this inner space, we have to get away from the places that are not meant for us. A very popular blogger, Maya Popova, an American blogger, writes that there's a space in all of us, an untrampled space that grows in solitude. To create anything, a poem, a painting, a theorem, is to find that voice in the silence that has something to share with the world. Virginia Woolf, the classic novelist, the mother of classic novels, wrote a book called A Room of One's Own, in which she explains how women in 70s were not allowed to have a room of their own, because if they did, they would learn to sit alone, and in this time they would learn to develop their own thoughts, opinions, and ideas, which would then turn into dreams and desires. And nobody wanted a woman with strong opinions or dream back in 70s or even today. So women were not allowed to sit alone or to have a room of their own. Solitude has always been a part of our lives. It is only recently that we are rejecting it as loneliness. From what was the source of creativity has now become the idea of misery. How did that happen? Well, number of reasons. Starting from how every single book to movie shows the lonely character as the sympathetic weirdo, someone no one chose, someone no one loves, someone who is either ugly, someone who is not cool enough, someone who would you either make fun of or feel pity for. And we didn't want to be seen as that sympathetic weirdo, so we go to extensive lengths to avoid loneliness, to avoid being seen alone. In solitude, your own truth reaches out to you and shows you the vision of a life that is more bigger and beautiful than the one that you have planned for yourself. But here comes the truth. But here comes the twist. On one side, as soon as a bigger idea reaches out to you, your older belief wakes up and starts telling you, are you sure you are good enough for this? But what if people laugh at you? But what if you are not good enough for this? Are you sure you can do this? Maybe another time, maybe 5 years from now, maybe not today because you do not have enough resources. So, on one side, there's a vision of a bigger and beautiful life that you know that is meant for you. But on other side, there are all the reasons that seem logical, that stand against you. And oftentimes, this inner conflict is so strong that people go and avoid solitude. When you sit alone, your truth will find you. The ideas will reach out to you, and you will develop dreams and desires that stand against your old belief. But the shadow of these old beliefs are often so strong. And if you don't break free from these old beliefs, you will keep accepting bare minimum and keep rejecting the idea of a bigger and beautiful life because you would still think that I'm not good enough for it. So, if I can leave you with just 3 day-to-day call to actions, I would say number one, vomit. Not actually vomit, but let go of all the belief that stand against you. Question where did these beliefs come from? Let go of all the beliefs that make you think you are not good enough. Because I think there are only 2 places we operate from in our day to day lives. One is a place of deep trust, knowledge, a place that is not seen, touched, or polluted by the world. And another is a place that is from learned belief. Our purpose, being here on earth, is to live from the place of our own truth. Second, find, and if you cannot, then make time to be alone. Let your truth speak to you. Let ideas reach out to you. Let the little bells from the future show you the person you can be and the life that you are supposed to have. And third, stop consuming and start creating. Your brain do not need more information. You do not need more knowledge. You do not have to suffocate your brain anymore. This is the time when you should start creating something, anything, a lousy poem, a bad story, a song that doesn't rhyme, a painting that you don't even like, but create. Because creation is our purpose, consumption is not. Thank you.